While there's no premier running back on the waiver wire this week, you actually have options at pretty much every single position, especially if you lost Jaden Daniels, if you lost Tucker Kraft. There will be names at quarterback and tight end for you. Starting off with the quarterback, there are so many options. I mean, obviously, I live streamed on Monday answering a bunch of trade questions, and I did see some people panicking after losing Jaden Daniels. And my main thing I want to stress to you is while it could be a good idea if at the right price, you can trade for an elite level quarterback like Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, maybe even Drake May. What I do not want you doing is I do not want you going out there and paying up to get a low-end quarterback one like Matthew Stafford or Jackson Dart, because realistically, with the amount of options that are probably on your waiver wire, you're probably just better off going through and streaming the position if you're not going to pay up for an elite name. Now, the names that I would be looking at are going to be very dependent on your league and your team. Like if you needed somebody to start in the long term, Joe Flacco would probably be your guy. Now in the short term, if you needed a 1 week fill in because you have Patrick Mahomes on bye, obviously Flacco's not going to be doing much for you just because at the end of the day with Joe Flacco, he does have the bye week in week 10 himself. But realistically, if we go through and look at what Joe Flacco has done so far with the Cincinnati Bengals, while I thought he was going to regress ever so slightly, clearly he hasn't. He has actually scored 24 points in 3 games straight. You are looking at Joe Flacco in the past 4 weeks with Cincinnati with only 2 interceptions, and he has a combined total of 11 passing touchdowns. So Joe Flacco has been incredible. He has averaged over 300 passing yards per game over the past month. He has averaged about 23, 24 points per game. If we look at the matchups that he's going to have later in the season, you're going to have them going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where that defense did look good against Indianapolis, but in reality, it's not a good defense. Going to be going up against New England. New England's going to be able to put points up. So Flacco's going to have to drop back consistently. Against Baltimore, they're going to be trailing. Against Buffalo, they're going to be trailing. Against Baltimore, they're going to be trailing. Pretty much all these games, the over-under is going to be crazy high. So Flacco could be startable. Now, Marcus Mariota is probably not a quarterback that I'm super excited about in the short term, just because if you look at what you have this next week, you are going up against the Detroit Lions, and you've also already had Terry McLaurin ruled out. My assumption's going to be with Mariota, you probably don't get Terry McLaurin back until after the week 12 bye. But then if you look at the matchups, he has to play against Denver in week 13 and Minnesota in week 14. So instead of picking up Marcus Mariota, I would actually look at 3 other quarterbacks such as Justin Fields for one. With Justin Fields, you actually did have him dropping 20 fantasy points against the Cincinnati Bengals in week 8. That was a game in which you had no Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson back at practice this week. It's not going to be a guarantee that Justin Fields is the starting quarterback, but if he were to be the starter, obviously you have a tremendous amount of rushing upside, so he would be viable. Sam Darnold could also be in consideration for you. Sam Darnold, 28 fantasy points this past week. If you're looking at Darnold's averages so far this season, he's actually carried over what he was able to do last season, where last season he averaged about 18 fantasy points per game. That's only fallen to about 17 points per game. Then Brock Purdy has a very real shot to be playing this week. If you were to get Purdy back and Ricky Pearsall back at the same time, the only holdup is some of these Niners games that you have over the next few weeks aren't incredible matchups. But all in all, my quarterbacks out of this list for short-term plays, I'd be looking at Fields and Darnold. For long-term plays, I'd probably be looking at Purdy and Flacco. If you just lost Jaden Daniels, reasonably, you could pick up a combination of a player like Justin Fields and Joe Flacco and roll with the matchups rest of season. Now, let's move over to the running backs. Starting off with Isaiah Davis. It's very important that we get this waiver wire video out quickly, because by the time you're watching this, there's a very real possibility that Breece Hall has been dealt. Now, obviously, this has been what has been on everybody's mind for God knows how long now. I was kind of hoping you would get traded during the bye week. It did not happen. Ever since you had Braylon Allen go down, you did have Isaiah Davis taking a significant step up with his overall role in this offense. specifically his role as a receiver has been great, where over the past month, he's had 3 games with over 20 receiving yards so far. Now, obviously, we're not ever going to tell you that you could put Isaiah Davis inside your starting lineup outside of a Breece Hall trade or a Breece Hall injury, but you never know. This is the time in which you could see Breece get dealt. Then Dylan Sampson will be our next RB with Dylan Sampson, and we'll throw in the other guy in this list, Tank Bigsby. Very similar plays here. I wouldn't have them at the top of my list. I'd prefer Isaiah Davis and prefer Devin Singletary. And obviously, if you ever want to see the rankings of these guys, just link your league with flockfantasy.com. Just literally go to the My Team section. It's completely free if you play on ESPN, Yahoo, or Sleeper Fantasy. And all you got to do is go to that far right column. You'll see the best waiver wire selections, and you can filter that by position. It is significantly better than going through and trying to figure out who's the trending player on Sleeper, who's projected to score the most points in week 9 on ESPN. The way that those platforms have the default waiver setup ordered is really bad. If you're using the rest of season rankings on the My Teams page on flockfantasy.com, it's going to help you out a ton. But anyway, you will see Devin Singletary is probably ranked higher than Tank Bigsby and Dylan Sampson on that list, because Tank Bigsby and Dylan Sampson are probably just short-term stopgaps on the off chance that Saquon Barkley or Quinshon Judkins are not good to go this week. I just want to put a reminder out there to Saquon Barkley teams. Hey, Barkley got injured in week 8. I have Barkley on my own roster. My expectations are he's most likely playing this week, but I personally am rostering Tank Bigsby just in case I do need that backup option. I would tell you to do the same thing if you had Quinshon Judkins with Dylan Sampson. But Devin Singletary will probably be my number 2 ranked waiver wire pickup at the running back position this week, because realistically, he does look like he is the running back 1B to Tyrone Tracy's running back 1A. You did see him with 56% of the snaps this past week. He had 8 carries, and at the same time, he had 2 targets as well. Now, realistically, I don't think Devin Singletary is going to be startable outside of a injury to Tyrone Tracy. If that were to occur, he's the last guy standing for the Giants. But in reality, honestly, I don't even know if you have to rank him behind guys like Tank Bigsby as well as Dylan Sampson, because I think they're in the same boat, never wanting to start Devin Singletary outside of that Tracy injury. Now, moving over to wide receiver. Here, there are some interesting pickups. The number 1 guy is going to be Parker Washington. If you needed a short-term fill-in, I actually like Parker Washington a hell of a lot more than these running backs specifically. Because if you are looking at Washington, this is now back-to-back games where he's had at least 9 targets. And I wasn't that excited about him this past week against the Raiders. But not only do you have no Travis Hunter, but you have Brian Thomas Jr. with the high ankle sprain. So realistically, if we look at this, Parker Washington is really the last guy standing. I mean, you can even sprinkle in the fact that you have no Brenton Strange. Now, do I think Parker Washington is some incredible talent? No, of course not. Do I think Trevor Lawrence is an incredible quarterback? No, of course not. But ultimately, you are able to go through and you're able to start a wide receiver that is just going to be able to command volume, even if it's cheap volume. Christian Watson will be our next name. With Watson, the big thing that I want to look at is not only do you have the Tucker Kraft injury, but also Matthew Golden is going down as well. While Watson only had a total of 4 targets this past week, I mean, he had 4 targets in week 8 as well. You have had a total of about 140 receiving yards so far this season off of those 8 targets. So he's that deep threat here in Green Bay. This team desperately needs a deep threat added into this offense. He went from playing 56% of the snaps against the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 8 to 66% against the Carolina Panthers. We're going to assume every week that goes by when he's removed from this torn ACL, his role in this offense is going to continue to expand. And if you remember what he was able to do at the end of his rookie season, the end of his rookie year, he put up a game with 32 points, 21 points, 21 points, 24 points. He went a month-long stretch averaging almost 25 points a game. Now, Torrey Horton will be our next wide receiver. I would be less excited about Torrey Horton than these other options. Obviously, he comes through with multiple receiving touchdowns this past week, but one, it's in a game in which you have no Sam Darnold, And 2, it's in a game where he had almost no volume. Jackson Smith-Njigba is still the black hole for targets in this offense. Everything is going to be getting funneled through him. But Torrey Horton is a viable pickup if you are in a deeper format and you need a short-term start at wide receiver. But I want to remind you, wide receiver waiver wire options are way sketchier than what you have with running backs. Because with running backs, we can look at a player like Rico Dowdle that comes off the waiver wire when Chuba Hubbard's injured, like Kyle Monangai coming off the waiver wire when DeAndre Swift gets injured. And we can say with confidence, oh, okay, if the starting running back's out, you put him in your lineup because he's going to see guaranteed opportunities. You never get those guaranteed opportunities with these guys like Torrey Horton, Christian Watson. But I do think that you could have Parker Washington and Christian Watson as the wide receiver ones in their offenses, which is why I'd prioritize them over Torrey Horton, where Horton is never going to be anything better than a wide receiver 2 here. Now, going over to my favorite waiver wire pickup of the week, it's going to be Colston Loveland. Loveland this past week just absolutely cucks Rome Odunze. I'm starting Rome. I really was hoping I was going to get a big game from him. I thought it was a great matchup against Cincinnati. Crazy high implied team total with Chicago. We were like, start all the Bears. And what happens? 0 points for Rome Odunze because Loveland has multiple receiving touchdowns. He has 118 receiving yards, and he has almost 30 fantasy points. Cole Kmet has never done this. Let me just confirm that as I say it, because Cole Kmet's been in the league since 2020. And 2020, his best game ever, he scored 14.5 points. And 2021, his best game ever, he scored 14.5 points. And 2022, his best game ever, he scored 23. And 2023, his best game ever, he scored 27. And 2024, his best game ever, he scored 25. So far, you've seen Cole Kmet play 4 17-game seasons, and he's played a 16-game season. I'm no mathematician, but I do think that adds up to a lot of games, and he's never looked as good as Loveland. Loveland has the draft capital. He has the athletic profile. Market share numbers were crazy in college. His offense never threw the ball, though, so the raw counting stats were incredible, but he went ahead of Tyler Warren in the NFL draft, and he's more so a prototypical receiving tight end rather than a blocking one. So yeah, Loveland is a tight end that very easily is a top 10 option in my rest of season rankings. Danny in the Flock League's been holding on to him all season long. He just lost Tucker Kraft for the year. Now he has Loveland to backfill. And if you lost Tucker Kraft, I would love to pick up Loveland. Obviously, you could look at Luke Musgrave as well. Luke Musgrave was actually in the same draft class as Tucker Kraft. Luke Musgrave was the tight end that this team looked at the very beginning of their careers, just because he was actually the player that had the draft capital. But realistically, he has done absolutely nothing in his NFL career from a receiving perspective, more so an inline tight end, absolute monster of a man. But you could look at him in super deep leagues if you don't have Loveland available, just given the fact that, hell, I mean, the Packers lose Kraft. They probably lose Matthew Golden for some games. And at the same time, obviously, they have no Reed. So the options are getting thin in Green Bay. But that's all I got for you. I really want to remind you, it's super easy for you to just link your league if you play on ESPN, Yahoo, or Sleeper to flockfantasy.com for completely free. Just go to the My Teams page, and then in the far right-hand column, it will show the exact waiver wire pickups that are available in your league that would be best for you to get. Players like Kyle Monangai, I'm not going to include in these videos because I would assume that they're already rostered in your format, but there are maybe some of those other names that I'm not talking about here that I think are rostered and they aren't. So please double check with that tool just to make sure that you are picking up the number one option in your league. It's going to be a much better setup than just looking at the projected points for week 10 on ESPN or whatever the hell you usually do. But I think that's all I got for you. I really appreciate you. I'll leave the link to flockfantasy.com in the description or comment section if any of y'all want to check that out for free. But yeah, much love, and I'll see you out in the live stream later tonight.